Hey everyone, my name is Taylor Donner, and for as long as I can remember, I've loved fishing. Whether it was sitting on a boat with my grandpa or driving around gravel roads in Wisconsin looking for trout streams with my dad, fish have always managed to capture my imagination. I think a large part of it back then was the intrigue of the unknown, this idea that I could catch a fish larger than myself. But since then, I've come to appreciate those experiences and to cherish those memories. And I think that's what led me to this project, which is a program on Blue Mesa Reservoir designed to increase the survival of stocked kokanee salmon and to limit the population growth of lake trout by incentivizing people to get out and go fishing. I just really found it interesting that encouraging people to enjoy the outdoors could simultaneously serve as a valuable management tool. All right, so starting with a little bit of background information. Blue Mesa Reservoir, which is the largest in Colorado, was established in 1965, and every year since then it's been stocked with kokanee salmon. In 2018 alone, 3.6 million kokanee were stocked, and 9.2 million eggs were collected by Parks and Wildlife. Also, 5 million of those eggs were spread to hatcheries around the state, making Blue Mesa the most productive kokanee fishery in Colorado. In addition to that, it's extremely well known for being a trophy lake trout fishery, as lake trout in Blue Mesa exhibit some of the fastest growth rates in North America. Currently, it boasts the state record lake trout, sitting at 50 pounds and 5.6 ounces. Since lake trout are primary predators of kokanee, it's essential to manage the population of both fish. So, why are we looking to increase the survival of kokanee and to limit the population growth of lake trout? Well, overall, the need stems from the value and importance of maintaining a healthy fishery on Blue Mesa Reservoir. Parks and Wildlife creel surveys indicate that the primary species of interest for Blue Mesa anglers is kokanee, with 45% of them specifically targeting that species, compared to only about 7% who are targeting lake trout. On top of that, the value of the kokanee fishery to the local economy has been estimated at around $5 million per year. Also in Blue Mesa, lake trout began to show natural reproduction around 1993, despite increases to daily bag limits and the removal of size restrictions. This corroborated with a significant decrease in kokanee abundance, with annual hydroacoustic surveys estimating the amount of kokanee to have decreased from over 1 million fish in 2002 to less than 100,000 by 2009. Over that same time period, angler harvest went from 130,000 kokanee to less than 20,000, despite increased annual stocking. With the kokanee natural reproduction continuing to be negligible in Blue Mesa, modeling suggests that their population will continue to decline without a mode of intensified lake trout suppression, since liberal harvest regulations have not resulted in reduced lake trout predation or in kokanee recovery. In response to this, Parks and Wildlife conducted gillnetting beginning in 2009 and called an average of about 1,200 lake trout per year. There were a lot of misconceptions about gillnetting, however, fueling backlash to the program. There were opinions that all netted fish were killed and that the trophy lake trout fishery was being ruined. In reality, only smaller specimens, generally under 26 inches, were removed, and there was only about a 4% incidental mortality rate for larger netted lake trout. Regardless, anglers reached out and they made it clear they'd like to be more involved in the management of lake trout. Another benefit to that is that having anglers participate will significantly reduce the cost of suppression work for Parks and Wildlife. When it comes to designing a way for anglers to be more involved in lake trout suppression, we drew heavily from a similar project in Lake Pend Oreille, Idaho. Their lake trout were stocked in 1925, and their population grew exponentially from 1999 to 2005. Eventually, lake trout predation on kokanee threatened to collapse the kokanee population entirely. In response, gill netting, trap netting, and cash incentives for anglers were used to reduce the lake trout population, ultimately leading to a 60% decline from 2006 to 2016 and promoting a full kokanee recovery. Perhaps most importantly, however, they found that the effort required to sustain reduced lake trout populations was about 80% lower than the effort required to suppress lake trout to a reduced level. So now moving on to the project on Blue Mesa. So essentially this project is a fishing tournament that runs from February 1st, 2020 until July 31st, 2020. And eligible fish for this tournament are lake trout under 24 inches. So we went with the 24-inch mark because despite increasing survival of kokanee being a primary goal, we also want to make sure that we're protecting that trophy lake trout fishery as well. So to start, we set up freezers at boat ramps around the reservoir, those ramps being Elk Creek, Lake Fork, and Iola. And we also set up freezers at the Parks and Wildlife offices in Montrose and Gunnison. So if an angler catches a fish that's eligible for this tournament, they cut off the head, walk up to one of these freezers, and then open the black mailbox that you see. And in that will be an information slip and a Ziploc bag. So first they'll drop the heads in the Ziploc bag and then fill out that information slip, drop that in the Ziploc bag, and then put it all in the freezer. And then they're entered into the tournament free of charge. Essentially, each head turned in represents one chance in a lottery, and the lottery is 20 random $200 prizes, which will be announced at the end of the tournament. In addition to that, we went out in the fall and tagged 20 lake trout with microchips in their snouts. So if an angler happens to catch one of these tagged fish and turn it in, each one of those is worth $250. And then finally, we're offering prizes for the most, second most, and third most fish caught by individual anglers. And those are worth $1,000, $500, and $250. And then once the tournament is over, we'll host a ceremony and give out all of those awards. So from the beginning of February until about halfway through March, I was out on the ice every weekend as well as one day in addition to that per week. And I was collecting survey information for Parks and Wildlife, as well as handing out brochures and educating people about the lake trout tournament. In addition to that, I also was collecting all the lake trout heads from the freezers, and then I would bring them back to the office and measure each head to make sure it fit in that size range. So when we netted fish in the fall, we developed a head length total length ratio. So as long as the head length falls within that ratio, we determined it to be eligible for the tournament. And then I scanned each head for a microchip. And finally, I entered all of that information into a database so that we can determine who's entering the tournament, who's eligible for these prizes, and get some idea on participation. So looking at the outcomes of the tournament so far, 3,303 heads have been submitted by 225 separate anglers. Of those anglers, 5 have separated themselves from the pack, turning in 241, 235, 181, 157, and 153 heads. Of those 5 anglers, 4 of them are from Gunnison. Also, despite the large number of total heads being submitted, only one of them has had a tag so far. That just gives you an idea of the number of small lake trout that are in Blue Mesa. Obviously, however, participation has dropped significantly due to the COVID situation. Here you can see a graph of lake trout heads submitted by date. You can already see how sharply it began to decline at the end of March. And then for the entire month of April, only 2 lake trout heads were submitted. Despite all of that, early numbers suggest that this could be a valuable management tool for future years, and it has the potential to completely replace gill netting efforts. Some things we may want to look into changing in the future, however, possibly gathering more support from local businesses. This could help with marketing efforts, and they could also potentially donate prizes for the tournament. We also may want to look into giving out smaller monthly prizes just to keep interest in the tournament up throughout the duration. And then finally, since only one tagged fish was caught, we may want to look into prize alternatives for that just to give people a better chance to win. Overall, I hope this tournament helps maintain the integrity of both the kokanee and the lake trout fisheries on Blue Mesa, but I really also hope it encouraged people to go outside, to go fishing, to make memories, and to fall in love with the natural world around them. I want to say thank you so much to all of the Western faculty who have helped me along the way, especially Dr. Melanie Armstrong, Dr. Felipe Chavez Ramirez, and Dr. Corey Knapp. And finally, thank you to Dan Brow and everyone else from Colorado Parks and Wildlife. I could not have done any of this without their help.